Alright, get ready, because this one's going to be a big chungy wungy. So, I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate what I did. Um, so, you'll notice that Banjo is not the normal color, right? And, like, you're like, oh, that was in version 2 of the randomizer. Like, what's the big deal? Banjo is now a different color. And you might be like, okay, cool. You figured out how to change the color in Banjo. Nope. I figured out how to add additional models to the game and have Banjo use those instead. I am now Lavender. This was not easy. This was extremely annoying, and let me explain why. So, this is the function to determine what model the player should be. Easily enough, if you are one of these transformations, you are just that model. There's no additional model to be added. However, Banjo himself has two models, a low poly model and a high poly model. And depending on the map you're in, determines whether you are high poly or low poly. If you're in a cutscene, or if you're in a big map, you are the low poly model. Which, like, it makes sense. Like, the world's huge. Low poly makes it so the game doesn't lag as much. Plus, like, Banjo doesn't need as much detail because you're zoomed out a lot anyway. And which means anytime you're in a small room, it uses the high poly model. But notice how big this guy is, right? I asked myself, would I be able to change this map get to a level get and then pick a specific model from there? And I had to make sure that the models were in order because I can just do a +1/+1 for every level. Like the levels are enumerators, right? So going to here, and I actually scrolled down too early, but it's fine. Where is what I'm looking for? So these are the models that you normally use. Notice how this says 034D. And if I go back to here, you'll see 34D. These are the two models that Banjo normally uses. And if I scroll down, you'll see that there's conveniently just like a bunch of space here that's not being used. So what I was able to do is update the asset offset table in order to add custom models here and have them be usable. I can show off how that is later. I don't fully understand it, but basically what this does is, well, what I did was I correctly calculated the correct offsets, right? Like where if I like insert them, and then there are some values at the end, and I just copied them from the high poly and low poly model, which I don't fully understand what those things are. One of them is definitely whether the file is already decompressed or if it is compressed. And the other value I don't fully understand, to be honest. So that's why I'm not really showing that off. I will do more research into that later. For now, understand that I placed the additional models here. Now, the way that this code is optimized is that it basically says, you know, are you between these values of maps? Are you between these values? And so I changed that because that ended up taking a lot of room to just, are you in this level? Do this. Are you in this level? Do this. Are you in this level? Do this. Very easy. However, whenever I did swap the, you know, change the pointing the where the model of the words, let me redo that. Whenever I changed what model it is pointing to, it also affected the eyeballs and Kazooie. Now, what does that mean? Let me go to this function right here. This function says if you are specifically this model asset ID or this one, do these functions. And if you are this model, use this guy. If you're this model, use this guy. So, dilemma. I am no longer using 34D. I am now using 399 as an example, or 39A. And there are way more of these than there are cases here. So, what did I end up doing? The way that this is optimized is it actually takes the first model ID and subtracts your current model and this guy. So if you are using the low poly model, the value will actually be 0. And if you are the high poly model, the value will be 1. And from there, it does a shift and it does like a specific jump function to figure out which model you actually are. So I changed it in order to, and I can show you the code later, but it's kind of a big chunky wungy. Actually, let me go ahead and just show it off. This guy. So there's 3 parts. We're currently looking at, so this guy is this guy right here. That is this change. No, not you. You. And I'm adding the level ID to the model in order to figure out which model I should be using. This one that we're looking at right now is for spawning Kazooie. This guy spawns Kazooie and the Turbo Trainers, which is the running shoes, and the wading boots, which is for Soul Stride. This spawns the sled, and this spawns the running shoes for the crocodile. So this section gets that to work. Now, you'll notice that I have talked about section 1 and section 3, but what the fuck is section 2? If I go to this function, at the very bottom, you'll see that there's another function. This guy happens to be this guy, which is only called from this guy. And this guy determines the eyeballs. You'll see that there's the Banjo low poly and high poly models. There is the Termite Walrus Pumpkin Croc and the Wishy Washy. And you might be like, hey, Jiggly, why is the bee not here? Good question. Let me show that off. And I made a save state in order to make this easier. So, we're gonna look at the termite's eyes for like 5 seconds. Did you see that? Termite Banjo blinks. Now let me go to my save state. So I am currently in Clock Wood. And I don't know why it's charging me mumbo tokens. I have to look into that. Bee Banjo does not blink. Now, in real life, bees do not blink. Shout out to Banjo Freak for letting me know about that. And I guess the developers were like, yo, this bee shouldn't blink either. So, fun fact, this bee doesn't blink. Let me actually go ahead and reopen up the ROM, because I'm going to need it later. And then I'll pause it just so like the music's not blasting in our ears. So, similar to this function down here, I figured out how to make this compatible with multiple things, except I kind of cheated in a sense. So you'll notice that there is no default statement here, right? And I'm like, if there's no default statement, then there's no way that there, you know, there's a possibility that this will break, but it hasn't broken yet. But essentially, I said, are you Banjo? If so, use this. Are you Wishy-Washy? If so, use this. Otherwise, assume you are a transformation. I was so close to not having enough space, and I'm so proud of that solution. But that's what this guy is. It checks whether you are above a certain model. If so, use that. Otherwise, it checks if you're wishy-washy. Otherwise, it just assumes you are a transformation. And I believe... Did I even use this? I don't think I even use this anymore. I think I can delete that. Let me just check. No, that's something else. Yeah, so uh that is how I got the eyes to work and the multiple models to work. But there's more to this. Um, I had to test whether this would crash for Wishy-Washy, because as you can see in this list, Wishy-Washy is here, and I had to make sure that if for some godforsaken reason someone was like, I wanted to play as Wishy-Washy and it crashed my game, Jiggly, can you fix it? That it would work for Wishy-Washy. Notice how I turned on the game. I exited the game and I came back in. This is not a save state. I am in a flat out turn on. What normally happens for Bottles bonus is the game does not save whether you've actually beaten Bottles bonus. This is not the Xbox version. The game says, have you beat Bottles in this session? If so, save it in RAM. And then you can go be the silly Bottles bonus, right? Did I use the same model twice? I might have, because that looks like the same green as spell mount. Doesn't matter. So we're gonna patch Leaky. And I've already got this Jiggy. This wasn't a, like, randomizer automatically activates this kind of thing. But in order to test this, I had to... Let's do this. So you'll notice, again, opened it up, right? Restarted the game, right? I got the cheats to always be active. Now I gotta remember how to spell wishy-washy. 1 second. Wishy... She... Banjo. Hopefully this works. It should. And it blinks. Okay, so now that I've showed off all this stuff, what did I do to make the cheat codes always activatable? So if I go to Bottles bonus, right, you will notice that there is, hold up, let's find the function, what am I looking for? When completed, there we go. There is a function for when Bottles completes, whenever you complete the Bottles bonus puzzle, and it sets this guy to true. If I go this guy and I look at the very top of the file, let's actually go here. It's just 7 fucking whatevers, right? But if I go to TTC, and I believe I know exactly where it is, so it shouldn't be hard to find. TTC, this guy. I guess it doesn't show it off that well. It's fine. But it sets this guy to true, saying that you have completed this one, right? This also shows up at the bottom of the file. This is initializing it. And it sets all of these values to 0 and sets all of these values to 0. And the bitch about this is that the way MIPS optimizes values is it says there is a register specifically for 0 that you never have to set. Like most registers, you have to set saying add immediate unsigned is set here, and it's add these 2 values, one of them being probably register 0 and the other one being a value that you set. But so to do this, I needed exactly 1 more line of code. Thankfully, though, this is at the bottom of the file. And if you know how these files are basically set up, they have to end at a specific I think it's like 16 bytes. And so when there's extra room at the very end, it will have a bunch of this kind of empty space. I am able, at the very top of this function, add one singular line and then shift everything down and then change these register zeros to that value, which is what I did, I think, at the very bottom of my file. This guy, bottles bonus always activatable. And I can remove these guys because this is like the original stuff, and then this is what I modified it to, which you'll see just add that 4 there. So this essentially turns every 0 here into a 1. And now you can activate the sandcastle codes whenever you want. That was a lot. Thanks for bearing with me. That was the speedrun rundown. This could have went into more detail. So hopefully you guys enjoy. Until next time, peace.